what is the assessment, the design of the assessment. This is really nuts and bolts as far as what are the things that we need to know and be able to do in order to be able to administer the assessment for our students, and some of the functionality of our SBAC portal website. And so we are going to be looking at this website today and kind of walking through and talking through like a lot of the different aspects of it. But we're also going to be intentionally not talking about parts of it, and that's because we're only going to be focusing on the need to know right now, not the nice to know stuff. So we'll go through and do a brief overview of some of the pieces of things that are in there, just so that you have a general idea and awareness of what they are. But they're probably things that maybe would be good for this summer, or in the fall we might have some trainings on some of these other components. So we really are just focused on what is it that you guys need to have knowledge for before you can, in 3 or 4 weeks, start to administer the assessment for students. The other part of what we'll be doing before you leave today is you will be taking a online test administrator certificate process. It's just a narrated PowerPoint with some activities, a few questions at the end. It is required for everyone who is going to be administering the test to take that and get their certification for that, so that the computer then allows you access to actually administer the test for students. So we're going to spend some time kind of giving you an opportunity to do that. That will take probably about 30 to 40 minutes. And so we'll do kind of a brief overview of a bunch of things at the beginning. We'll take a quick break. We'll take your certification process. And then the last part of it we'll start to do is some entry of designated supports and accommodations for students into the TIDE system. And we'll talk about those things first before we had our break. Okay, so feel free to ask any questions that you might have at any point. I might not have all of the answers. There's some questions that have come out of this. You guys are number 5 out of 10 of these road shows that Lauren and myself are doing. And so we have gotten some questions that we've been trying to send out to other people to get feedback from. Some of those things are coming back, and some of these things we still don't know. So if you generate a new question and we don't have the answer for that, we might not have it for you today, but we'll continue to find out what those are and make sure that you guys are feeling ready and supportive. Okay? Also, as I walk you through and talk you through things today, we will be building in repetition of you clicking and going through certain places over and over again, and that is by design, so that it becomes part of your registered consciousness. It becomes really familiar for you, so that way when I'm not here, you don't have to spend forever clicking. Hopefully you'll really understand where it is that you're going to go. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, and anyone can do this even if you have your login or not, is to go to that website that's on the floor right now. This is the same website as what we had before when you were probably giving students practice tests. The only difference is instead of SBAC in the front of it, it's VT. And I would recommend that you bookmark this on your personal computer, because this is going to be the Vermont portal that you will use often and frequently in your own practice, certainly between now and the assessment, but even next year you'll be able to use it throughout the year. So it's going to be kind of a go-to place for you. So vt.portal.airast.org. Is there a password to get into the internet, or I can't seem to access? I could do MCS.
I just got one.
I went in as a guest.
I
Chose the guest.
Oh, it's because I was on there.
Yes.
Yeah, go west. Or if you were in the west wing.
So
You can always use one of the Google, the Chromebooks too.
So when you go into the website, you should get a screen.
Yeah. I might as well, because this is not what's in the book.
You should be able to see the screen that looks something along these lines. One of the things that I would recommend is up in the very top black bar on the far right, you see where it says register for email updates. As new things come onto the portal, if you click on that, you'll just get an email that will let you know. So if a new webinar becomes available, or a new resource, or new materials become available, you'll get an email from them just letting you and having you notified. So it's a way for you to get information I recommend it too, just because it's an opportunity for you to be reminded that this thing exists, so you can go in and click on it.
And if, when we receive that email, what is their title, so we don't trash them?
Yeah, so that's a good question.
What is,
Let me pull it up, because I just.
Vermont Cordial Air.
Let me
Just
double
that.
check.
it's on the black, right there, Vermont.
Right, that's what I did. No, right, Vermont, dot, But it's being overseen by a different group, AI.
Then it should.
I'm gonna say AIG.
It's
not
called
AIG.
AIR, but I'm not
AIR.
sure.
AIR.
Oh, that's what it is,
Yeah.
AI.
If you just Google Vermont SBAC portal,
Yeah.
you'll get there.
Yeah.
It's easy.
No, but
I find that easy.
Well,
I
that's what
almost trashed
always- That's how I
this.
always get in.
Because
Yeah, I didn't know it was.
a friend of mine, her son works for AIR, and I thought, why am I getting those emails? This is ridiculous. I'll probably get that at home, and I started to like, get rid of it.
It will come from VT-AOE Smarter Balanced. So if you get
All the updates.
an email, will be a capital VT-AOE Smarter Balanced, so all the updates will come from them. Okay. So if you see that in large caps, that's what that is. It's telling you that there's a new resource or a new something that is available on here. So the other piece, and as things become updated, you'll see that there's this recent announcements piece here that will let you know anything that's been recently added, what that's in there. So if you have any questions about what that is or anything that's new, you can always click on that. I find that they tend to come in waves. So sometimes you'll get all of a sudden an alert and you have like 3 emails from them. You might not then hear from them for a week or so. So it's not like you're going to get it every day. So the big thing to know is on the left-hand side there are 4 buttons, and this website that you're looking at is an open source website. So this is a website that you can send parents and community members to if they have questions. There are some open resources and opportunities and information for them. So if you have people who are asking lots of questions, they can come in and find some information. And then the other areas are locked by secured passwords. So that's why you have your NEAC password that's set. That password is what will let you into the different locked in areas into your computer. And that's designated based on the type of login that you were given as to what you have access to, as well as whether or not you've passed your certification. Also locks you out of things if you have not yet done that. So we're going to do is we're going to first walk through and talk about that first button, which is the student and family section, just so that you know what's in there, so that if you have students and also families or teachers or community members, board members that want and have more information, you can speak about what's in there. So if you go ahead and click on that button on your computer, you will see that there are 2 gray buttons that appear. The first one says SBAC Practice and Training Tests. So when we have our secured browser up and running, you should be able to click on that and have students actually taking the practice test. I'm in a PowerPoint.
Whoops.
I'm going to click on it in a minute.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
If you're watching it, this is not the right screen.
When you say
It will change.
secure thing up and
We're going to
running,
click on that first one on the top.
is that when it's
That should be done. That's being done right now. There was some miscommunication between us and IT. We thought it was already done. It was not. We found that out yesterday. So they're doing it this morning. The secured browser is getting pushed out. They weren't sure if it was ready to be pushed out or not. We found out yesterday it wasn't pushed out, so we said no, push it out. So it's happening like probably as we speak. So there's the practice and training tests that are in there. The practice and training tests that are in this website are not any different than the practice and training tests that were already on the SBAC website that you've probably given your students as practice previous to now. Okay? So there's nothing different here. The only difference is, and we will be asking all teachers to try to give students a practice test before we get to the actual launch of the real assessment, and that is because they will be doing so through the secured browser. We believe that 98% of any issues that will happen with student accounts having access to the assessment will actually get caught through just them trying to log in through the secured browser. So as a means for us to be able to check to make sure that there are no issues with individual student accounts prior to our actual assessment. Also, when we talk about how we can indicate and put in designated supports for kids, this will be the way for us to test those designated supports for students before we get to the actual assessment. So every teacher, we're asking everyone to try and give them exposure. Does that mean they need to go through and do the whole practice test? No. But you can have them go in for half an hour, 40 minutes, having them getting used to what does it look like with these different supports that are available, and what does it look like now that it's in the secured browser, making sure that we don't have any issues.
Does the test work differently than the other practice tests? In other words, you don't have to go through each section again? So if a child finishes the first section in the past, we had to go through all of that again to get to the second section?
That is a question I am not quite sure about.
That's a really key question.
Yeah.
It would be really great to know,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things we were hoping to test yesterday and we could not. So we will find that out. So
Okay.
if there's a possibility, if we know that that's up and running, we can test that today before you guys go. So students, if you click on that that practice and training test for students, the one thing that you'll notice is that, and go ahead and click on that next button which says to take the test, right? So you'll notice that this login looks very similar to the login that we had before for a regular practice one, where we had students just click through. So you'll notice that the screen looks very similar to the old one that we had before, where it says guess, guess, guess for everything. We will actually be able to, if you unselect that little button next to the guess, this is where students will be able to type in their name, their SSID number, and then their session ID number. Actually, they can do this as of right now.
No, they do not have that yet.
So we'll talk about what all of that is. It'll make a little bit more sense in a few minutes.
Okay.
So this is where students will be going to do their logging in order to be able to take these practice tests and the assessments as they become available.
This is as we move into the secure browser.
Correct.
Thank you.
So this is where they're gonna take the actual test as well as the practice test.
Right, so right now, because we're not in our testing window yet, we don't see that icon for the actual assessment, we only see that icon for the practice test. There will be a new one that will be populated when we get the actual assessment. So this, when you clicked on this, it actually created its own tab, I believe. So in order to get out of this, you just have to close this. It should take you back to where you were a moment ago. We're going to go ahead and practice. We're going to go back up to, and you can click either on the mountains or the home button, and I'll take you back to the home page. And we will go back to student and families again, because now we will talk about that second button, and you can select student and faculty resources. Or family resources, sorry.
Can you help me, somebody? How do I go back to history? I'll go back to student families again.
Students and families.
We were just at practice.
No, you went, you must
I
have
went
X'd out. Yeah, so you're
I
going to
went
open
out.
up a new
Yeah.
tab.
Oh,
So you X'd out of both of your tabs.
So I can't-
You'll have to
history?
open up a new one and just type in VT dot.
Yeah.
So there's no history, I'm not used to using this computer, I can't go to history and go back.
No, because I believe it's at a different tab. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so in here you'll see that there are two folders for students. Inside of these folders, one is full of practice tools. These are open source tools that you can be using with kids on a regular basis in classrooms as part of instruction or helping kids become more familiar. So if you go ahead and select the practice tools, what you'll notice is that we have a list of calculators with links. For grades 6 through up, students are allowed to have calculators on certain selected items. So they can select that calculator and it will open up the calculator for them. So you can give this as an opportunity or a resource for students. So if you are working with your fifth grade students to prepare them for next year, I wouldn't necessarily, if you're a fifth grade teacher right now, worry about it for this year. But for next year's fifth grade teacher, in order to get them more and more familiar with that computer calculator, you could be, as you're working with your students, having them just pull that up as a calculator to practice every once in a while so that they're gaining familiarity with that calculator. There's another different calculator for junior high and high school. Underneath those two calculators is the next one, which is the one that I would assume, I think is a good one for all students to have some familiarity